Good evening and welcome to Information Please, your Peoria Public Library on the air. Bring you information about your library and your community. And this evening, my guest is author Sylvia Schultz, who's written the new book, Fractured Spirits, and is going to be with us at the library for a book talk and signing very soon. Hi, Sylvia.
Hi, Tricia.
I'm glad you could come.
Thank you very much.
And we're really excited that you're going to be at North Branch on Saturday, March 16th at 1 o'clock.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and people will be able to buy your book there, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you'll sign them and you'll talk about your book.
Yes, I will be giving a presentation on Fractured Spirits, and afterwards there will be plenty of time for questions.
Oh,
and
good.
yes, I will have books for sale.
Good. And the reason everybody probably is going to flood the place is because recently your stories were featured on the Sci-Fi Channel's Ghost Hunters.
Yes, that's right. That was me.
And were you actually on? I didn't get to see it.
I was, yes.
Oh,
They interviewed
Yay.
me for about 20 minutes, and I didn't expect them to use all of it, and they most certainly did not. But I was actually on at the very beginning of the show. They used my voice and everything for the introduction to the show, which was very, very gratifying.
Oh, fun.
And yeah, I got to be on several times.
Okay, great. And the book actually isn't even out yet, right?
It is, yes.
It is? It is
Yes.
out, okay.
The release date was February 15th, this past Friday,
Okay.
and yesterday, thank goodness UPS works on a holiday, because I now have 6 boxes of books
ready to go.
sitting in my living room.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of people that pre-ordered the book. Thank you very much. And, so I'm
well, I know it's
sending those
available
out.
on Amazon.
It is,
and
yes.
is it available at local bookstores too?
It is, yes.
Okay.
It's going to be at Morey's in Pekin. Barnes & Noble in Peoria will be carrying it. Acme Comics in Peoria will be carrying it. You'll
Great.
be able to find it all over the place.
Yeah. Well, and I know you can go on the web and look up Sci-Fi Channel and Ghost Hunters.
And see the actual program.
See the show
yes.
if you missed it. So that's a lot of fun to be able to do that. And
to be able to say,
exciting.
I know her.
Yeah. So tell me, let's go back to basics here. And
Yes.
the full title is Fractured Spirits Hauntings at the Peoria State Hospital, which of course is in Bartonville. But what got you interested in that subject?
Well, I've always been interested in ghost stories. I grew up in the Chicago suburbs, and my father would tell me stories of Archer Avenue and Resurrection Mary and the ghostly monks at St. James the Sag. And I grew up thinking how wonderful it is for me to live so close to Chicago and so close to the origin of all these wonderful ghost stories. And then I moved up and grew up and moved away and moved to this area. I live in Pekin now, and I started hearing tales of a haunted asylum that had been abandoned for years, and kids would go out there and sneak around. And I realized, oh my gosh, this is another wealth of ghost stories that I need to go check out.
Yeah.
And there have been 2 books written on the history of the asylum that are very, very good. I highly recommend them. And every ghost story book about Illinois worth its salt will mention Bartonville as being a very haunted place, but no one had ever gone and collected all of these ghost stories coming out of Bartonville and put them all into one place. So that's what I've done.
Okay. Is this your first book?
Oh, heavens no.
Oh, okay.
No. I usually write horror and romance.
Oh, all
and
right.
a fine line separating the two. But I have also written another true ghost story book.
Okay.
Ghosts of the Illinois River.
Okay.
And actually the Peoria Library is featured in that book.
Yay.
So this is my second nonfiction book.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. Well, we'll have to make sure that we have you back and talk about all your books someday.
That would be lovely.
Well, tell me, how did you end up working with Ghost Hunters and the Sci-Fi Channel with this book?
Well, the owner of the Bowen Building, Richard Weiss, he and I have been acquainted for a couple years now through his ownership of the Bowen Building, and he was gracious enough to drop my name to the people at Ghost Hunters and gave them my phone number, and I got a phone call from the producer of the show. And he and I talked. He was in California, I was in Illinois, but we talked, and he satisfied himself that I knew what I was talking about when it came to hauntings in general and the asylum in particular. And
I didn't know there was a quiz.
not really, but we talked and just had a
Yeah.
conversation about things, and he said, yes, we'd like to get you on camera. So
Oh, well,
that's
that's
how that
cool.
happened.
All right. Well, tell us, what do you think is your favorite story about the ghosts at this asylum?
My favorite story is one that not many people will know until they read the book. Everybody knows the story of Old Book, so that's pretty common around this area, so I won't drag that old chestnut out again. But there was a story that was told to me by one of the volunteers at the Pollock Hospital, which is the TB ward. They have a ghost there that they have nicknamed Heavy Boots.
Oh.
It's a guy who stomps around in what sounds like heavy workman, big
High
clumpy
boots.
shoes. This volunteer, Chris, a friend of mine, was working very late at night in the haunted house that the JFL puts on. And she was there with a friend of hers, and they were in the doorway that was the intake hallway of the hospital. And they were fiddling with the doorknob, trying to get the door locked for the haunt. And Chris started hearing boots coming down the hall, footsteps, heavy footsteps. And she honestly thought that she had accidentally locked someone in the haunt.
Oh.
And she was all prepared to face this haunt goer
Yeah.
that had been locked in accidentally. So she said to Jeff, she said, "Give me the light." She wanted the flashlight that he was holding. And the boots kept coming closer, and she's like, "Give me the light." And the boots are coming closer, and Jeff didn't hear her because she was whispering like that.
Yeah.
And she finally bellowed, "Give me the light!" and Jeff, fumbled the flashlight and handed it to her, and Chris clicked the flashlight on and swung it over to the footsteps, and the footsteps stopped.
Wow.
And there wasn't anybody there. And she has been in the Pollock Hospital so often and so long that she can usually tell when there's something supernatural going on.
Yeah.
This caught her flat-footed. She had no idea. I mean, usually the hairs on the back of her neck stand up.
Yeah.
Had no idea. She was like, "Okay, you got me."
Yeah.
And then a few weeks later, a different volunteer, Stacy, was in the haunt, and they were getting ready to close up for the night again. And they have these barrels with light bulbs underneath so that they glow, kind of.
Yeah.
So she had just reached down into the barrel and unscrewed the light bulb when somebody else turned off the lights.
Oh boy.
So she was in complete darkness. And she was like, "Okay, do I reach around and try to feel and screw this light bulb in by feel, or do I just walk down the hallway in the complete darkness
Yeah. Or yell,
and get back
"Turn
to the
lights
light?"
on."
And just at that moment when she's trying to make that decision, she heard heavy boots coming towards her. She heard the heavy footsteps. So she was like, "Okay, decision's made," and she started booking down the hallway. And she's just running down the hallway, and Chris looks out of one of the rooms and sees Stacy goes booking past, and Stacy just gasped out, "Heavy boots!"
Oh.
Just kept running, and Chris is like, "Okay, I know."
Oh, goodness. So is that a newer ghost then that maybe doesn't like being part of the haunted house? Or?
Could be. I don't know.
Oh. Now, what does the cover of your book represent? You have Woman in a Straitjacket. Is that a particular person or just?
No. I have a very talented cover artist named Donnie Light. And I won't trust anyone else with my covers. He does such a fabulous job with my book covers that he's my go-to guy for covers. And he was the one who designed this. And he just, every book about haunted Illinois, particularly those set in this area, and every book about the history of the asylum has the Bowen Building on the cover. And the Bowen Building is magnificent. I love it. Yeah. But I decided it was time for something else. So I asked him, "Please, please, please, do anything you want with the cover. Just don't put the Bowen Building on it," much as I love the place. And he just came up with something that would make people wonder what was inside the book.
Oh, all right. Yeah, it's very, very attractive cover for.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm very pleased with it.
Is this actually a doorway from one of the buildings?
Oh, no. Donnie
just art.
Grabbed stuff at random.
Just art. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and it might surprise you to know that not everybody who's lived here always does know everything about this building or these ghosts.
Okay.
And in fact, I don't know anything about these
Well,
ghosts.
see, that's why I wrote the book.
Yes, and so there it is. And so I know you're writing more about the hauntings than the actual history, but do you know how long the building was open?
Yes, yes, I do. And actually, I'm really glad you brought that up, Tricia, because the more I studied the hauntings and the more I learned about the hauntings, the more I realized that you couldn't really understand the hauntings without understanding the history of the place. And that is what is really getting people's attention about the Peoria State Hospital, because it was not a place of pain and suffering. A lot of people think haunted asylum, oh gosh, it's an asylum, it's an abandoned asylum, of course it's haunted because the patients were abused. That is not the case with the Peoria State Hospital, and that is what makes it unique in the history of mental health care in America. It was open from 1902 to 1973. And so this year is the 40th anniversary of the closing, which is pretty cool.
It's hard for me to believe it's been closed that long.
It has, just over a generation.
So people don't remember.
And
it's been quite a while now since the North Peoria facility, Zeller Mental Health Center, opened and closed. And I don't remember when that one opened, but it's been closed long enough that it's been... It was
2004, 2005,
it was open
like
in the
that?
70s. It was.
Oh, was it? Okay.
It may have been opened in the 60s because I can remember very clearly patients from there. Well, when I was in high school, I can remember several people who were patients there in the early 70s and late 60s. And so it had to have been opened before then.
Okay.
And I don't even know if it was that new then. So, but it's been closed long enough now that it's now a college campus.
Right. ICC bought it.
Yeah, no hauntings there.
Well, depending on who you talk to. I did hear a couple of strange stories from there
about that too.
Just weird noises in the hallways late at night, things like that.
Oh.
Yeah.
But that facility was named after Dr. Zeller, who was in charge of the state hospital.
It was
and
named
apparently
after
did
Dr.
a lot
Zeller.
of cutting edge work with mental health.
Dr. Zeller was absolutely amazing. He took the bars off of the windows of the buildings and he turned those bars into a zoo enclosure, and the patients were encouraged to care for the animals. They had a black bear in the zoo.
Wow.
It was cared for by the patients, and it was so tame that it would take a bath in the waiting pool on command.
Oh, wow.
And the patients caring for the bear would take it around to all the different cottages and let it go visiting people.
Yeah.
And can you imagine?
Yeah, that's pretty wild. That's pretty wild. But yeah, what a huge, when you see old movies and old images of an asylum, it's always people who are filthy, dirty, and laying in straw and cold stone and screaming. And
if you want to make a horror movie 10 times as horrible, set it in an asylum.
Yeah.
Because you know there's going to be no happy ending.
I know that at Peoria Public Library we have some historic photos and people working on farms and people doing laundry. And,
yes.
And
The Peoria State Hospital was its own little community. They had 3 working farms. All of their food was locally grown. They had a laundry. They had their own fire department. They had their own water supply.
Yeah.
It was its own insular little community.
Yeah, and kind of supported itself. And so it was a very different thing, I think, than what we think of.
Very different. You're absolutely right.
But we're here to talk about hauntings. So you just mentioned cottages and farms. So do you know how many total buildings there were? I mean, what was the Bone building?
There were 65 buildings originally on the campus at its height, and 13 of those are left.
Okay. And the big one is the big stone building.
The big stone Bowen building.
We're
is
always
one
used
of
to
them.
seeing it.
Yes, that's the public face of the asylum. And the reason it is so uppermost in many people's minds is that it's on the top of the hill. And there's that lawn in front of it that kind of goes down to a little dip in the ground. Very early on in the asylum's history, that was a pond. And later on, the pond was drained and a garden was put in there, a sunken garden. And when people were when people came to the asylum to visit their relatives on a Sunday, If the patient was geriatric and couldn't leave their room, then you went to visit the patient in their room. Other than that, the patient was brought out to see his family or her family. And when the weather was nice, that's where the patients would meet with their loved ones, is in that sunken garden.
In the garden.
With the Bowen building as the backdrop. And that's why it's so iconic in people's minds in this area.
Why they remember it so well. Yeah, I don't know that I actually know anybody who ever had a relative that was there, but I don't know that they would admit that either.
I've spoken to quite a lot of people
Have
that
you?
had relatives there, and they had nothing but good things to say about the place.
Yeah.
I heard no evidence of
Did people
abuse.
get out once they went in?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
People
The
got better
Peoria
and
State
came home?
Hospital had the highest rate of cure in the United States.
Wow.
It was the best care you could get.
Wow.
And it did have the highest rate of cure. Unfortunately, that was also its downfall, because the state looked at it in the 60s and said, oh, it's got the highest rate of cure, and it's also the most expensive.
Yeah.
So the state started cutting funding, and that's when, unfortunately, it started going downhill.
Yes.
And that's where you get 400 nurses trying to care for 4,000 patients.
Yeah.
That's when you get people just standing around in the hallways doing nothing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that sort of thing did creep in at the end of the asylum's lifetime.
The very end of it. Yeah. Well, it's just too bad, because I think when you look back at the history, I think it was a good thing.
But still, even so, there were 28 patients, I think there were 28 patients left when the asylum closed, and they were farmed off to different asylums. Galesburg Mental Health Center in Galesburg took a few, a nursing home in Pekin took a couple, and there was some patients that went to Springfield. And there's a documented case of this person that was in Springfield walking back
Wow.
to Bartonville.
Wow.
And being found sitting on the steps of the cottage where they used to live, just waiting to be let back in, not realizing that the place had closed.
Yeah.
Because they were happy there. That was the only home they knew.
Yeah, that was the place to be.
Yeah.
But with something being open that long, obviously there were a lot of deaths there, and there's cemetery,
There were.
right?
Yes, there are 4 cemeteries on the grounds.
Are they well cared for, or they have
They
fallen?
When
How were graves marked?
Well, Cemetery 1 was for people that had families with money that could afford proper gravestones. There's also a smaller cemetery next to Cemetery 1 that's really kind of part of it, that is where veterans were buried. The veterans got their own cottage. Dr. Zeller realized that they were suffering from something special, which we now call PTSD.
Yes.
And he treated the veterans with all kinds of respect, and they had their own separate burying ground. Cemetery 2 was for paupers, people who didn't have family to put up nice gravestones.
Right.
So that's why a lot of gravestones in Cemetery 2 are just marked with numbers. Illinois state law says that you cannot use a name on a gravestone unless it's your legal name.
Oh, okay.
And many of the people, especially the poor people that came into the asylum, were unable to tell the intake nurses their legal name.
Okay.
So they became known by nicknames.
Okay.
So, and they were assigned a number, and Dr. Zeller kept very careful records of which number was buried where. Unfortunately, all those records have been lost. When the asylum was
Closed.
abandoned, everybody walked away from all the records, and unfortunately those have been lost.
That's happened a lot of places with a lot of cemeteries.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just
But
don't know.
people are beginning to realize that this is a place worth saving, and they have become aware that the cemeteries do need care.
Right.
There's a volunteer group that goes out to the cemeteries. I think they're still working on cemeteries 3 and 4 now, which is, it's a great big cemetery that's kind of divided by a road in the middle.
Okay.
And that reflects the cemetery design of the 1920s. It's called
Yes.
the Road to Glory,
Ah,
a Pathway to Glory. And so what they do is they dig up each stone, and they put more dirt underneath it, and
Yeah,
they level
to
it out
raise
very
it.
carefully, and then they set it back. And they do this over and over and over again, but it needs to be
Wow.
done.
yeah. If you don't, they just go underground, and
They get swallowed by
yeah,
the earth.
yeah, that, and then you get the freezing and the cracking, and that's the end.
And the settling, yeah.
So, do you think your book will do anything to help save the place or maintain
Oh
it?
man, that is my dearest, deepest wish. I want people to realize that it is a place worth saving.
Yeah.
that there is such incredible history here. I mean, the place is just crawling with ghosts, and that's really wonderful for me as an investigator and for the investigators that come to the place. But I want those people, and I want the people in this area to realize that it's not only a very haunted place, it's a place with really rich history, and history that definitely deserves to be remembered.
Do you think people are more or less likely to want to save it because it's haunted?
I think people are going to be more interested in saving it.
Because it's haunted.
That's the sensational part.
Yeah.
And if it helps to save the place, I'm all for it.
And we're talking about the saving thing because everybody thought that we were good and that it was being developed and there was a lot of plans for it. But the Journal-Star on Thursday, February 14th, the headline was "Building May Become a Ghost," with your Bowen building talking about that it's probably going to be torn down and the limestone sold.
Well, let's not say probably yet.
Okay.
Let's leave the probably off the table. We'll just say
an
may.
alternate plan to raise the money to pay back the loan could be to sell it block by block for the limestone.
Yes, and to someone on the East Coast. It's not even somebody local.
Yeah.
And this building is so much, it's worth so much more than the sum of its parts. And I can't believe that
there isn't hope.
That there isn't hope. I can't believe that there's a plan to tear it down and get rid of it. And the volunteers that help take care of the Bowen building are rabid in their appreciation of the building, as it should be. I mean, it's part of the asylum, and it's, like I said, it's the public face of the asylum, and to have that go away.
Now, does the person who owns this own just this building, or do they own the entire asylum?
No, they own just the Bowen building.
Okay, so who owns the rest of the property and the cemeteries and?
Well, the state owns the cemeteries. I do believe it's either the state or the city of Bartonville owns the cemeteries. I think it may be the city after all. The Pollock building, the TB ward, is owned by the Limestone JFL. There are a couple of other buildings. There's one of the cottages was turned into a dentist's office. The Octagon building is businesses. The Phoenix Club is a restaurant. Right next door to the Phoenix Club is Stone Country, the bar. So they're all owned by different people.
So all those are parts of the asylum that have already been recycled and are being reused.
And are being repurposed for other other uses.
Oh, good. That's great. That's great. Well, we'll have to hope, and if people are interested in that story or who owns it or what's going on with it, they can, of course, just look at the Journal-Star website for February 14th, or come into the library and we have the back issues.
Absolutely, yes. Fond du Lac Library has back issues too.
Yeah, everybody does.
Right. Yeah, I saw that headline and my heart just stopped. I could feel
so you didn't
my heart.
You didn't know about that before you saw it?
I didn't. No.
Okay.
None at all. I thought everything was wonderful.
That's good. But the people who owned, you worked closely though with the people who own the building.
Yes, I'm closer with the people that have the Pollock building, but I have worked with the people that own the Bowen building as well.
So you had to work with a lot of different people to do this book.
I spoke with a lot of people. That's what the book is different people's experiences, people coming to me and telling me their experiences.
So are all the buildings haunted? Just the Bowen building?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. So the one that's the bar, Stone Country?
Stone Country, yes, that's haunted as well.
Does that one have ghosts too?
Oh my, yes.
Dancing ghosts, drinking ghosts?
Well, it used to be the gymnasium for the asylum, so there's a lot of activity still there.
Oh, all right. Well, that's interesting, and everybody's going to have to read the book, I think, to find out about that.
Oh, read the book. You won't be sorry.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of fun stories.
We should say again that if someone has tuned in late, that you're going to be at the North Branch on Saturday, March 16th at 1.
Yes, beginning at 1 and going till all the questions have been answered.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We said at the library 1 to 2, but I kind of figured that you were generous with your information.
Absolutely.
We'll keep going.
Absolutely.
And how much does the book sell for?
It's $15.
$15. And of course, we always, whenever an author does anything, you generously donate a portion of your proceeds to our Friends group.
Yes.
And we really appreciate that because, of course, our Friends of the Library group then gives us that money to do things like our summer reading program, which seems like it's just, even this is, here we are March, but it's just
You're
around
already
the corner.
thinking, I know for a fact
And
you're already thinking about it.
as a mother of children who were formerly small, you're already planning your summer activities. So yes, we will have summer reading, and yes, people will be very busy with that because we have all kinds of programs and things that go on.
So come out to the library for the book talk and buy a couple books and help support the library.
Yeah, that'll be absolutely great. So you said you wrote another book about ghosts of the Illinois River Valley, Illinois River.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And did you write at all about the wreck of the Columbia, which there's another new?
I
Ken
did
Zursky.
not. Yes, I left that to Ken to do.
Okay.
I wasn't. I heard about the wreck and I was fascinated with the story, but I couldn't really find any ghostly
stories
occurrences.
about it?
I mentioned it in the introduction to the book.
Oh, okay.
And just to point out the fact that the Illinois River has a great deal of history, tragic history, as well as ghosts in general.
So when people are at your talk at the library, can they ask you about that book if they have questions?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You'll talk about any ghost anytime.
I will.
All the time.
I will.
You have copies of that one for sale too?
Yes, I do, and that's 10.
Oh, 10.
Yes.
Okay. So that's a great
And The Wreck of the
chance.
Columbia is a really good book too.
Yes,
By
and
the
we
way.
have Ken has been on this show, and people can look on YouTube and watch Ken Zursky and the
cool.
show I did with him to talk about his book, The Wreck of the Columbia, which is very thorough.
It
There's lots of
is.
photos and really, really cool stuff.
I live in Pekin, and my house was built in 1914. So now, whenever I walk through my living room, I get this little shiver, going, "I wonder,
Yeah, who was in here?
Was
Yes.
somebody actually laid out in my living room?"
Oh. Well, Sylvia, thank you so much for taking time to come and talk to us, and we're
Thank
really going to
you.
look forward to seeing you at the library and hearing in depth about the fractured spirits hauntings at Peoria State Hospital.
Thank you very much for having me on.
There's so much going on at the library. We have probably close to 100 programs a month now. You can find that out on our website, peoriapubliclibrary.org, which has just been redesigned and is even easier to use. Lots of pretty pictures of all our buildings. We have our calendar. We also have passages in our e-newsletter, or you can ask at any library location what's going on. We'll see you next week at Information Please.